Welcome to Heat Up Your Retreats, the podcast where purpose meets planning and God-sized dreams come to life through transformational travel experiences. I'm your host, Amanda Heater, CEO of Across the Horizon Travel, retreat strategist, and passionate believer in using travel as a tool for impact. Whether you're a coach, pastor, wellness leader, or change maker, ready to lead your first or even your next retreat, you're in the right place. Let's turn your vision into a powerful, profitable, and spirit-led retreat experience. Let's heat things up together. Welcome back to Heat Up Your Retreats. I am your host, Amanda, and today I'm deeply honored to be joined by Jennifer Newberg, a community builder, retreat creator, and the founder of It's Lifey, a soulful organization dedicated to helping people facing some of life's hardest transitions find connection, support, and purpose. After the sudden loss of her husband on a dream trip in 2024, Jennifer turned unimaginable pain into community-centered healing by hosting retreats, support circles, and spaces where people don't have to navigate life's hardest moments alone. We will explore how she's transformed grief into a mission that is changing lives, how retreats can be powerful tools for healing, and what it takes to hold space for others through transition. Welcome, Jennifer. I'm so excited that you're here with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. I am so excited for our conversation today because I know that you have some new things in the pipeline for you. So I kind of wanted to start from the beginning. So I know that your story is very deeply personal and it's very powerful. So can you share with the listeners what led you to start It's Lifey, and then also how that first retreat came to life?
Absolutely. I am a very open book. I share my story as openly and honestly as I possibly can because everyone goes through messy things in life. And if there's one listener out there that's nodding their head saying me too, then I have accomplished something really great. And so my story, is one of loss. I was on vacation with my husband Jack. We were in Greece. We were on a 14-day trip. It was the trip of a lifetime. I had spent over a year planning it. I could have used your help. And It was night four. We had gone out for dinner. Everything was fine. And he woke me up around 4 o'clock in the morning and he said, I think I'm having a heart attack. And I ran down to the front desk and I said, we have to call 911. And the hotel owner happened to be down there and he looked at me and he said, there is no 911. You're on an island in the Mediterranean and it's off season. And so, we both ran up, we did what we could, we got, the best medics we could possibly find. But long story short, he had passed within a very short period of time. It was about 5 minutes from that moment that he said, I think I'm having a heart attack till he was gone. And so, navigating all of the logistics that come from dying in another country, and, getting home, having to tell my family without being in person. It was all, incredibly difficult coming home to the chaos of funeral planning and end of life planning and just it was a lot. It was a lot. And so about 6 months after he died, I threw my hands in the air and I said, I need to get out of here. I need a break. And so I went online and I started to look for retreats for myself. And so retreats are actually a very, very important part of my story. And it's why I'm so happy to know you and to know your work. And so because I'm a due diligence person, I interviewed about 7 different retreat leaders and I felt connected to this one in particular. And so I went on her retreat, which was in Costa Rica. It was a yoga retreat. I don't do yoga. And I arrived, and most of the women there were 20 or more years younger than me. And one of them, I tell this story all the time, one of them ran up to me and she said, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you. How much do you practice?" And I said, "Practice what?" And she said, "Yoga. You're on a yoga retreat." And I was like, "Oh, I just needed to get away from my life." And so, what that retreat provided me was a lot of what I needed, which was to restore and rejuvenate and recharge, and just to, again, get away. But what I had hoped to find that I didn't was community and camaraderie and people who got it. I didn't expect them to be widows per se, but to really have lived a life. And widowhood is just one of the traumas that I've experienced in my life. And so, on my way home, I said, I've worked in marketing and PR my whole career. I planned a million events. Why don't I plan my own retreat specifically for widows? And so I'm a go-getter, if that's what we want to call it. And within about 2 weeks, I had a house booked, I had speakers lined up, I had marketing materials ready to go. And this was in December of 2024, and I hosted my first retreat in July of 2025, so about 6 months later. And so that's how, I kind of, and that retreat was life-changing. And I don't want to get ahead of your other questions, but that retreat turned into another. And you talk about the healing power of retreats. And I say these women came as strangers and left as friends they will rely on for the rest of their lives. It
Wow.
is truly the most magical thing I have ever experienced in my life.
That's
Um,
amazing. Wow. Your story is just so heartbreaking. That is like the worst nightmare for anybody when they're traveling and you experiencing that and then just bouncing back and using that grief to be able to help others. It's just so inspiring, Jennifer. So just thank you for sharing that.
of course,
So,
yeah.
in your experience, what makes a retreat a healing space rather than just an event or a getaway?
That is it. That's a great question. I think, what I've learned through doing, so my retreats that I've done have been very different. The first one I did, I had brought in speakers who were widows themselves and who already had platforms as widows. They had written books, they had a social media presence. Um, they were widow experts, if you want to call it that. I know it sounds really weird, but and so and they each did a session, and then in between that we had some activities planned. I way over scheduled it.
That happens.
That was a key learning. But having them share their story and having other people hear it and be able to identify with it, was critical to the healing process.
Hmm.
I also believe that family and friendships are born around food,
Yes.
and around a table. And so throughout all of my retreats, I will, there are some things that I said I would never do and I did, and some things that I did that I said I would never, there is one thing that will always be consistent is that breakfast, lunch, and dinner will be spent around a table with each other.
Yes. I
And,
love it.
getting to know each other on that level, I think was also really healing. And then most importantly, it's just the fact, it was what I had experienced in Costa Rica versus what I do now is just being with people who get it. This is a very targeted audience, and sometimes I struggle with that because, as you know, as a retreat planner, and it's hard to get people sometimes to come, and it's a process. And when you're dealing for me with a very narrow audience, it's sometimes a little bit more, but I wouldn't do it any other way because I think, while I would definitely and hope to do retreats for other people going through other life transitions in the future, I think having people who understand, what you have been through, and then having, whether it's leaders or, in my second retreat, it was much more around wellness, having wellness practitioners and kind of, teach us how to regulate our nervous systems and deal with some of the grief, and dance it out. That actually happened. I think that those are all healing elements, but again, no matter how it's formatted or how many activities or how it's planned, I think that the core is being with people who have lived a shared experience.
100%. 100%. And I know that that was definitely a learning experience for you with overpacking your retreat. I have so many
Mhm.
people that have planned their own. They're like, oh my gosh, I so overpacked it. And it's so key to just step out in faith and just do the thing. And you did it and you learned from it. And you got to see people experience transformation. And that's really what it's all about. I preach over and over again that retreats are all about transformational experiences where you're surrounded by community. You're doing the work on yourself to come out as a better person. And so I love that you had just used that grief to be able to help others. And you did that fast. Like that's crazy that that was so
It
quick,
was
like
crazy.
within a year. Like that's crazy. And I mean, not crazy, but you know what I mean? Like it was,
Yeah, no,
that
it's
is
crazy. It's okay. My best friend tells me I'm crazy all the time. It's good. We're all good.
I mean, I just love it. That means that you are just so strong-willed and you just are like, I'm going to get through this and I'm going to help others while getting through it. Because I know you were still healing during that time too, because healing is a long process,
It is
100%.
a long process, and I tell people that when they tell me that I'm crazy, that's usually my response is that this is just as healing for me as it is for everyone else. And I also do in-person and online support groups, and you meet people that you connect with people. I've been able to connect with some of the most incredible women ever, and they get to connect with each other, and there's a lot to that.
Yes, for sure. For sure. So, talking about working with people that are navigating that wide range of life shifts, like from grief to divorce to empty nesting, I know that you've worked with all different types of people. So, what common threads do you see in what people crave most from community and from retreat experiences?
Absolutely. So I use this quote often that our former Surgeon General, his name is Dr. Vivek Murthy, and he wrote a book called The Loneliness Epidemic. And in that book, there is a quote that says, loneliness is as detrimental to your mental health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day is to your physical health.
Whoa.
And I think that when people go through life transitions, and I will be transparent, I'm very focused on widows right now with the hopes of moving into creating communities for people going through other life transitions. But we're facing a loneliness epidemic in this world, and people, hide behind their phones and they hide behind their computers. And when you're going through grief, you feel so alone, because you feel like no one else gets it, and they don't. People say they do, but unless they've been through it, they don't. And so, the common thread, I would say, is that no matter how self-reliant you are, and no matter how many times you say, I can do this by myself, you can. And I'm not knocking you or, anyone for, not being strong enough, brave enough, good enough to do it on their own. It's so powerful. And there are so many logistics, forget about the emotional thing, just the logistical side of things is like insane. And so when you're with a community of people, you're sharing resources and you're saying, oh my God, that happened to me too. Or I know somebody, who can help you. And, I'm very open. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a coach. I'm a community builder. And, I bring people together and I ask questions. I don't do anything that's like, I'm not healing anyone. I'm just asking questions is what I find. And what I find is that that question leads to an answer, which leads to someone else saying, oh my gosh, me too. And here's what I did. And someone else saying, oh, well, this is what's going on with me. Do you have any advice? And it just becomes this open discussion. That is the common thread is connection. And it's helping to really, I say the antidote to loneliness is community.
Yep.
So, and people find it in so many places. People find it in religious ways. People find it, in their community centers within their towns. There are a lot of community-based organizations. For me, I feel very passionate about keeping it as narrow as possible so that it truly is people who can understand each other.
I love that. I always say this, and this is a conversation I have a lot on this podcast, is pre-COVID, there was just so much more in-person things.
Hmm.
COVID happened and everything became virtual. Meetings are virtual, like working is virtual. Just so many things are virtual nowadays. And people were meant and created by God to have community. And
Mhm.
so hosting retreats provides that safe space for one, people to open up and be very transparent and vulnerable without people judging them. And
Yeah.
two, when they do open up, it allows other people to come in and just comfort them, hold them, allow them to have that space to feel like they are valid in the emotions they're feeling, and help lift them up too. So I just love that you're doing what you're doing, Jennifer, because it's so needed in this very fallen world that we're in. And you're able to encourage widows, especially that may feel so lost, so alone, to have that community where they can reach out and continue to just have that support from yourself and then the other ladies involved. And that's just amazing.
I mean, if I could run retreats every week of my life, I would. If I didn't have a 16-year-old and a business that I'm starting and everything, I agree. They're so powerful. And being in person with people. Part of my story is that I'm in recovery from alcoholism, and recovery is a really big part of my life. My recovery community is everything for me, and it's almost where the seed was planted on how important community is. Similar to what you said, COVID hit, we all went online. It was like we did the best we could, but it was different. And then when everybody came back and was able to be in person again, it was magical. And in fact, I just went on a recovery retreat last weekend. Speaking of
Wow.
retreats. But yeah, no, having everybody in the same space, doing things together, like I said, eating around a table, participating in an activity, healing, being in a session that is focused on healing, and touch. I know that sounds a little, can be a little weird to say that, but giving someone a hug, I mean, come on. There is like, and there's a lot of people in this world who are like, I am not a hugger. I am a hugger. There are
Me
a lot of
too.
people who are like, do not lean in to give me that hug. And I can guarantee you, by the end of a retreat, everyone's hugging.
Mm-hmm.
They come in being like, oh, I'm a little unsure. And after, my retreats are 3 days. After day three, it is like love fest.
I love that. And
Um,
honestly, there's so much like scientific
mm,
research that's been done behind hugging and how like a longer hug boosts endorphins. It heals you. And so I always love when I hug someone because I'm a huge hugger, especially if
yeah,
it's someone that's close to me. I will hold them in a hug for like 10 seconds plus. And it
yeah.
can be a little uncomfortable for the person that's being hugged. But then what's funny is as I feel them pulling away and then they continue back in, they like fall into the hug. Like, I needed
Yes, I love
this.
it. I love
Yes.
it.
And it feels good for me too, because I need that too. But knowing that people need that human touch, because goodness gracious, COVID is another thing that stopped us a lot from touching.
Yeah, it did.
And I know this is an odd topic that we're on right now, but
I know.
but honestly, like it is so needed. We need that human touch and affection. We were created that way. And so if we're lacking that and you have that community again that's allowing people to have that, they're realizing that they're lacking it and maybe they'll give some more hugs when they get out into their community at home.
And it's not an odd topic because it kind of comes back to the idea of retreats and being in person and being with people that, there might be a session where someone says everybody stand in a circle and hold hands. You can't do that online.
Nope. Nope. Hold my own hand. That's weird.
And so, I really do think that retreats offer, I mean, there's so many beautiful things, so many
I
beautiful things. And you know what? They're fun. Who doesn't
hmm
want to have fun? Like
Yes.
that's, the other piece that I really try and balance. Like, yes, we're dealing with a heavy topic. We're dealing with the loss of your partner or your spouse or um, your significant other. And I am very inclusive to all of those things. And so it's heavy. Um, but throw in a visit to the farm to make tea and a hike or some arts and crafts like
Who
and I
doesn't love
say
that?
to people all the time, I said, you know what, yes, you're gonna cry, like there's no question about it, and yes, you're gonna have moments where you might have to step away and take some time of yourself, but you will also laugh and you will feel joy that you haven't felt in a long time,
Mm,
and that's really cool.
yes, 100%. Oof. Okay, so next question for you. What is one lesson that you learned about your own resilience that you think every retreat planner should understand when they're supporting others through big life changes like what you do?
That you don't know everything. You are not an expert, and you let your retreat attendees, you can do the planning, but at the end of the day, this is their retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would never force anybody to do anything. And I did learn that in my first retreat. I worked so hard to plan so many activities. And I remember getting to the last day, and everybody was like, we don't really want to go. And I
Wow.
had to call. It was a visit to an art museum, and it was, the artist that was, in residence was going to do a tour, and I had to call, and I just had to say, I'm really sorry. Like, we just can't make it, and it was okay. And so, I really think listening to the people that are on your retreat, especially when it's a healing experience like this, and being humble, and being, I learned that. I worked so hard to plan this, and I had to be like, okay, we're gonna have to give this one up. And I will say, as I've done more, I've planned less because there is a balance. And not everybody wants what I want. And I think that's another huge lesson is, I am an extrovert. I like to be busy all the time. I hate being alone. And so assuming that other people want that too it's not a great way to lead a retreat at all. And so, just understanding that everyone is a little bit different and everybody processes things. And so giving people space is really important. Like we said earlier, not over scheduling it is a huge lesson. And for myself personally, that was a humbling. That was for me, it was like, I had to learn that, again, not everybody's like me. So I
I
will say
love that. It's always a learning experience with every single retreat because you have new people and it's
yeah.
totally different experience. Even if you do the same location and the same exact outline, it's going to be 100% different than the first, second, third, 100th time you've done it because it's different people and there's different experiences that happen. And so I love that you were so flexible and you humbled yourself to say, okay, we're going to cancel this art museum visit and do what they wanted to do. And that's so key for the listeners that are listening to this. If you're thinking about hosting your own event, retreat, summit, listen to the people that are there and be flexible and be humble enough to say, okay, yeah, I wanted to do this so badly, but this is for them. It's not for the person that is hosting it, it is for the attendees that are there. So kudos to you, Jennifer, that you did that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I felt horrible. I felt so bad for this
Oh,
poor guy who had coordinated this whole thing for me. But especially when you have people paying for an experience, like, and especially again when it is around such an emotionally taxing topic, um, you got to do what's right for them.
exactly. So let's talk about looking ahead.
Hmm.
So, what vision do you have for the future of It's Lifey retreats in your community? And how can listeners support or even get involved?
Absolutely. I have spent the last since we last connected, Amanda, I've spent most of my time and effort building a platform called Hope Hub. And Hope Hub is a place for widows where they can connect with other widows. They can attend support groups. They can listen to interviews and participate in Q&A style with experts, from therapists to financial advisors to real estate agents. Everything, anybody that kind of can help guide a widow through their journey. There's a resource section, and then where we are is there is a events and live event section. And I just decided a week ago. No, I wish I could make this up. I swore I wasn't going to do another retreat to the fall till Hope Hub got off the ground and membership was booming, and then I would see who wanted to go on a retreat. And it all seemed like such a great idea. It's almost like, and this is funny coming from, somebody who struggled with addiction. I'm addicted to the retreats.
Hey, it's a good
And an
addiction, right?
opportunity fell in my lap, which is another thing that I hadn't even thought of, was co-hosting. And this woman said to me, who has her own audience of widows, and she said, "Well, what if I helped get people there and you did the planning?" And I was like, "Done." And with and so here I am, March 1st through 3rd, in Marblehead, Massachusetts, which is 30 minutes from where I live. Um, I am doing another retreat for widows, and taking the learnings that I've had. Each time I learn something new. And so, taking some of those learnings, but I would say, my main focus is building this community and Hope Hub. If you go to my website, it's lifey.com, you'll see a tab for Hope Hub, and that's where you can join the community. And then once you're in there, it is a membership-based platform. You do get a discount on the retreats that I lead. So I have that coming up in, I don't even know, February, March, April, May, 3 months. And I would say the other thing too is, if retreats is, I remember my daughter, I have a 16-year-old, and she came home, and I decided to do this. Let's say it was a Tuesday. And I sent out an email to the maybe 100 or so widows that I have either led a support group with or I'd been in a retreat. And the first two were hard to get people. It was easy to plan, but then the marketing piece of it was hard.
Hmm.
I ended up giving away some spots for free just because I wanted it to be a really good experience, and so I could learn from it. And my 16-year-old, I feel like I've like gone off on a path, but my 16-year-old comes home from school. This was like that Tuesday, and I said, "Okay, I'm doing another retreat." And she like looked at me like, "Mom," and I said, "But I have 7 people signed up in the last 24 hours." And that was like so telling to me that, and 2 of them have been on another retreat with me, and the other
Wow.
5 had been in some sort of community of mine, and were like, "When are you doing your next retreat?" And so it,
Wow.
it just demonstrates the power and the desire and the need. I encourage people to keep doing them. There's a need and a want out there. But yeah, so for me, it's really been focused on building my Hope Hub community, and now, very unexpectedly, planning my next retreat.
That's amazing, Jennifer. Oh my gosh. You are such an encouragement to everybody listening. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today on Heat Up Your Retreats and sharing your journey from heartbreak to purpose, and showing us that retreats aren't just about travel and planning, they're about connection, healing, and transformation. So, if what Jennifer shared today resonates with you, whether you're planning retreats that serve others or you're thinking about how retreats can be transformational, I encourage you to take just one insight and put it into practice this week. Remember, great retreats help change lives.
Mhm.
Jennifer, thank you again for being here. And to our listeners, stay inspired and let your next retreat be the one that truly heats up hearts and souls. Thank you for tuning in to Heat Up Your Retreats. I hope today's episode sparked fresh inspiration and reminded you that your retreat vision is meant to be realized. Are you ready to take the next step? Please send me an email at amanda@acrossthehorizontravel.com with the subject line of strategy session, and let's start building a transformational retreat that aligns with your mission. Be sure to follow, share, and leave a review so more leaders like you can heat things up too. Until next time, keep dreaming big, keep planning bold, and keep heating up your retreats.